Peace be upon you all. I want to talk about something called the dark room today. It's just a concept, but it's going to revolve around this idea of how God's reach, His presence, and His knowledge surpasses anything we could possibly understand. And the only way we know anything is by His leave. And the amount we know is beyond minuscule. There's a verse, God willing, we'll get to it. But it highlights the fact that the only way that we know anything is when something is illuminated for us. Imagine you enter a room, or you just wake up and you're in a pitch black room. You don't know anything about this room. Not a single thing. The only way for you to find out anything is by engaging with the room. You might walk and trip, and you think, oh, what was that? Maybe it's a bit of rock, a bit of wood, might be a chair. And even if you could illuminate the room, let's say you got lucky and you found the light switch, you don't know how many rooms outside this room that exists. This is your one small corner. But God, His omniscience, His omnipresence, extends to the entirety of all the universes. His commands flow between all of them, freely and without flaw. God willing, we're going to read some of these verses. So, in 2440, the title reads, Exile from God, Total Darkness. Another allegory is that of being in total darkness in the midst of a violent ocean with waves upon waves, in addition to thick fog, darkness upon darkness. If he looked at his own hand, he could barely see it. Whomever God deprives of light will have no light. This is a command by God, that if God rescinds your eyesight, rescinds your hearing, your ability to walk, to taste, to grab something, and for God this is easy to do. And if God abandons you, none after Him can support you. And here those who are lost, the layers in which they're hidden from the truth is such that when they look at their hand, they don't even know it's there. Right? That's the allegory there. You imagine you're at sea. It's pitch black, dark. The sea is destroying and battering you, and it's a thick fog. You have no hope, and it's at this point, typically, and our last vestige of mercy is when we implore God. And the verse in the Quran also says that, these people, even the unbelievers, they'll implore God in these positions because they recognize true authority. They recognize that only God can help them in that moment. But once they're saved, they return as if they were never in danger, as if God didn't save them. They attribute this to chance when there is no chance in the universe. In 55:33, O you jinns and humans, if you can penetrate the outer limits of the heavens and the earth, go ahead and penetrate. You cannot penetrate without authorization. This talks about the Big Bang now, 21-30. Do the unbelievers not realize that the heavens and the earth used to be one solid mass, that we exploded into existence, and from water we made all living things? Would they believe? So here's just the scale of the universe. You can see that obviously if you, in some of our previous sessions we've already talked about how improbable the universe came to be into existence. If you then put it into perspective, the size of the universe is roughly 13.3 billion light years. Then even if you took the entire Earth, some 12,000, 13,000 kilometers in radius, I think, this is nothing, right? It's less than nothing. And what's scarier, if you think about it, when you go to the higher universe, I think I heard Brother Amar talking about how the earth is like a speck, right? A grain of sand in an endless beach full of sand. and we just have this one corner. Now, if you imagine the universe as this endless beach, everywhere you look is just full. Imagine that becomes its own grain of sand. The next higher up, the universe, the 6th layer, is that much bigger than the 7th universe. And the scale continues in this manner, which means that the distance between us and hell, which is the 8th universe to be created, is effectively the distance between your fingers when you touch. When you touch your fingers, even though you feel the touch, there's still a gap. I don't know, it's atom's width or whatever. It's smaller than that. We are that close to hell. 7 universes, 67, 3 and 4. He created 7 universes in layers. You do not see any imperfections in the creation by the most gracious. Keep looking. Do you see any flaw? Keep looking again and again. Your eyes will come back stumped and conquered. Again, we talked about the 7 layers of the universe. This scale is beyond comparison. Just to imagine the universe is already a very difficult thing. Just to imagine the distance between us and the sun is already pretty hard. And yet, God, the supreme creator, the Almighty, has created all of this, all of the layers. We are unappreciative. Source of light, and this is again to the motif of this article, which is darkness. 2435. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. The allegory of his light is that of a concave mirror behind a lamp that is placed inside a glass container. The glass container is like a bright pearl-like star. The fuel thereof is supplied from a blessed oil-producing tree that is neither eastern nor western. Its oil is almost self-radiating, needs no fire to ignite it. Light upon light. God guides to his light whomever he wills. God thus cites the parables for the people. God is fully aware of all things. So this one is specifically about the reverse of that verse on darkness, right? God is the source of light. God is the truth. Huwallah huwal haq. He is the truth. So instead of total darkness, God's light is itself a source of light. Where it's saying here, oil producing 3, right? The fuel itself is self-radiating. It's almost self-radiating. So God's light is one that we can't even imagine. And on the day of judgment, when he descends upon all of us, you know, that will be a day to reckon. And the way I like to envisage in my mind is like, you can't look at the sun, it'll burn your retinas. But God's light is nothing like that. It is more radiant and more beautiful. And it's something that can completely penetrate you. And you obviously you can't encompass God. That's an amazing idea, to be fair. He created the heavens and the earth truthfully. He rose the night over the day and rose the day over the night. He committed the sun and the moon, each running for a predetermined period. These verses emphasize both physical and metaphorical darkness. They highlight how much remains unseen or uncomprehended, a theme that resonates with our modern scientific view of a mostly empty, unexplored universe. So this is just, again, this is some of the signs of God, that he rolls the night into the day. This proves that the earth is spherical, or at least continuous, right? You can only have this rolling by the fact that there's a gradient effect as night enters the day, and so on and so forth. And the sign is such that the things that we know, right, when we are in presence of light, when we can know certain things, even when we have absolute knowledge of everything, is completely minor compared to the scale of the universe. Everything we've understood is from this earth, is from guessing, basically good guesses using math and, you know, advanced technology, but they are guesses nonetheless. Now, without God, we are completely in the dark. So if you look at a hydrogen atom, for example, When they say something is an atom, it's basically, imagine a solar system, right? The sun, the planets orbiting it and so on. The entire solar system is considered an atom. And at the very core, you have the proton and the neutron, which is the sun. The proton has a positive charge, the neutron is chargeless, and then the planets are orbiting it are the electrons. Now when you look at a hydrogen's atom, this is a very small figure here. This is 0.5 to the 10 to the minus 10. That's 0.05 billionth of a meter. Right, if you look at, again, this is way smaller. If you touch your fingers, you can't even feel the atom, right? It's got gazillions of space around it after you tried to grab it. And the nucleus, the center of this solar system, this atom, the proton, i.e., imagine it's the sun, is 8.7 times 10 to the minus 16 meters. It is much, much, much smaller. The sun compared to the solar system is very, very small. And so the atom, in effect, is 500,000 times wider than its nucleus. This means that there is, in terms of space, 99.9999979 of an atom is empty space. So when you think of an atom, your body's made of atoms. Billions and billions of atoms, actually. Between these atoms are mainly space. Between the proton and the electrons, it's just emptiness. I mean, that's what science tells us. Whether this is true or not, God knows. And this resonates with everything else. If you look at the diameter of the Earth, it's some 13,000 kilometers. The distance from the Earth to the Sun, 150 kilometers. So if you times the Earth's diameter by 10, that's 120,000. Another 10, 1.2 million. Another 10, 12 million. Another 10, 120 million. That's how many times it has to go up just to get to the sun. The speed of light, for light to get from the Earth to the sun and back, is 8.4 minutes. That's how big that distance is. That light itself takes 8 something minutes to get to us. So if something happens in the sun now, we won't know until 8 something minutes later. So the sun holds 99.8% of all the mass in our solar system, yet almost all of the solar system volume is effectively vacuum. Even though the sun is huge, the distance between each planet, between the sun and all of the other orbiting planets, is such that the space inside it is greater than the amount of matter in between. Now I'll skip everything else. It's kind of talking about the same thing, which is that ultimately we're just full of space. And so this analogy is like in science is someone moving in a pitch black room, and everything is just a gradual mapping of reality. You're just guessing a little bit, you're improving every time. Even after thousands of years, you have a small room to play with. And our way of understanding is effectively some in trial and error, right? So anyone that comes to you and says, oh, I understand absolutely the facts of science and I've been able to prove God doesn't exist, for example, they don't understand just how much they don't understand. I don't want to get into it here, but I think we addressed it last week, the concept of dark matter and dark energy. So everything that we observe in the entire universe is explained by the amount of mass and energy holding it together. But the way that our universe behaves, the way that the galaxies form, how we all attract each other, the planets orbit the sun beautifully, there's not enough mass to keep it forming in that way. There's not enough force either. So they just created something called dark matter and dark energy. If you watch my latest video, I talk about that. But ultimately the point is, we don't know what's holding the universe together. Scientists, the best scientist on earth, doesn't know. And so they made up a concept called dark energy and dark matter because they can't see it at all. It's completely dark. And that accounts for 95% of all the things in the observable universe. So out of all our best guesses, we've only guessed 5%, and that's a gross overestimate. And there's this concept of unknown unknowns. So as you get to knowledge, obviously there's things you know, right? There's also things you don't know. So for example, I know I don't know how to cook very well, for example. That's fine, because I've seen certain people that can cook well. But then there's also unknown unknowns, which are knowledges that you don't even know you don't know, right? And in 1785, God addresses this. The title reads, Divine Revelation, the source of all knowledge. So every piece of knowledge, every single thing that we know, comes from God. They ask you about the revelation. Say, the revelation comes from my Lord. The knowledge given to you is minute. Now, I'm about to get into more technical things later, God willing. But here, God is clarifying that even the knowledge that we have been given is minute, is incalculably small to the scale that obviously the omniscient God would have. God is also clarifying here that because it's been given to us, whether you're an atheist, a disbeliever, an idolater, doesn't matter, the knowledge they have also came from God. The provisions they receive also came from God. And this is a fine differentiation here. But God is saying the knowledge given to you is minute. Meaning that out of all the things we could attain, obviously if God is giving it to us, we could attain it. If not, it will eventually be attained. Everything that we could possibly understand, to the end of time, to the best combination of all human efforts, is effectively zero, right? We're looking back to that percentage stuff. This is the amount in comparison that we don't know, or we cannot possibly ever know. This is resonating the same point. 1670, that was God created you, then he terminates your lives. He lets some of you live to the oldest age, only to find out that there is a limit to the knowledge they can acquire. God is omniscient, omnipotent. That's it. God is talking about the very limits of our knowledge, not just the fact that you're going to get old and that's it, that's all you ever will know. But I think it's addressing all of humanity. Our best endeavors, the sum of us, there is a limit to what you can understand. And before I get to the very end of the article, I'll just give the major conclusion here. The only thing that can surpass knowledge, the only thing that can remove doubt, is actually faith. Right? Faith is that rope, that extension to God. 22:15, God says, extend a rope to heaven and see that everything that you find worrying you is removed. Right? God says, those who believe that God can't protect them in this world and in the hereafter, extend a rope to the heavens. They'll see that everything that concerns them is eliminated. So instead of relying on your parent, your employer, some benefit that you claim, doesn't matter. Whatever you think you rely on, whatever you think you're stuck with, whatever you think that you're burdened by, God is saying, look, if you just get rid of that, right? Extend a rope just by faith alone to the skies, directly to the Almighty God. See what happens. I've done this a few times myself, and it's literally magic. You start noticing patterns, which is that the people that try to exert control upon you or make you feel that they have control upon you do not, right? If your employer says, oh, if you don't do this, I'm going to fire you, okay, fine. Guess what? There's going to be 70 other employers ready to hire you, because the provisions that you get, every penny, comes from God directly. God has provision for you. And if God is saying you're not going to get fired today, you're not going to get fired today. And even if you got fired today, God has planned the next route for you. A partner that you have, maybe you fear a desertion or whatever. But if you make your life and everything you do, every spending, every dedication towards God, you'll find that actually the core of their resolve is to test you, right? When they see that actually this is an immovable position, that his subservience and complete devotion to God is absolute. If that's the case, you are protected by God's leave. So we'll continue from what we discussed. The first one is about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So this is something called the quantum indeterminacy. So when you measure a particle, you can't know both its position and momentum. So if you measure the position of the particle, the momentum will have shifted in that point. The moment you measure it, it will have shifted. If you knew its momentum, you won't know its position. And what this means is like the positions of the electrons. We were talking about the electrons in like a solar system. The electrons are like the planets orbiting the solar system, the sun. The positions of these electrons are actually nebulous. It's like a cloud of probability that collapses when it's measured. And so, in reference to the article, the whole concept we're talking about is the dark room, right? So when you enter the dark room, or as you wake up, you're already in a dark room. Everything you do is a guess. Even if you had a source of light, you could focus on one particular corner in that room. The moment you're focusing on that corner, you're missing another part of the corner. And even in that point that you're focusing on, there's a fuzziness to it. The resolution is imperfect, right? It's the first time you're seeing something in a completely dark room, in a completely new reality, where it's some object, with some texture, making some weird noise. You're like, what is that? And so you can only peer into this understanding based on the perception that you have at the time, but it's a mere guess. And I'm trying to remember the verse where God says when lightning strikes, they move towards it. This is the same concept, that when God illuminates a specific path, the disbelievers, the hypocrites, they will just go towards it, right? Imagine playing football when you were a kid. The ball goes one way and everyone goes that way. The ball goes the other way, everyone goes that way. For the believers, whether there's light or not, we recognize that all source of light, all source of truth comes from God. We're not swayed by a flicker of, oh look, this completely disproves God or whatever, based on some nonsense, right? Because our faith overrides momentary understanding. And all the things I'm about to talk about here isn't momentary understanding. This is centuries-long understanding that haven't been disproven or have yet to be proven. And so these are the best minds in existence to have ever existed. And they've only come this close. And they're proving that actually you're breaching, or you're reaching the precipice of the limits of our understanding. So Heisenberg's uncertainty principle basically questions this notion of determinism. This is something that Newton came up with. He said that if you can predict, the motions and paths of all heavenly bodies, then you can predict the future. Heisenberg comes across and says, actually, you can't. With the best will in the world, you cannot, because all you have is a probability of what could happen, never the certainty of it. This extends to math, which is the second part here, Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So in Gödel's theorem, he proved, from a mathematical perspective, that there are true statements that cannot be proven. And so in math, there's these things called axioms, which are the foundations of how math is built, right? For example, there's a axiom for set theory, where you qualify 1, or however you define to an alien, 1 + 1 = 2. To an alien, doesn't know what 1 means, doesn't know what equals means, no plus. There's a whole thesis trying to prove 1 + 1 = 2 from a very, very rudimentary sense. And what Gödel proved using prime numbers and factors of prime numbers, that if you assigned every known formula, every known theorem to man, and each subsequent characters within it as prime numbers, you will arrive at a prime number that cannot itself be proven. And so each of these symbols will have a prime number at the back, and it's like a recursive statement. For example, it's like a card. The card is a specific equation, for example, and at the back of the card is the Gödel factor. And if the card says the factor or the proof behind this card is wrong, you flip the card and the card behind says this formula is wrong, the formula behind this is wrong. So you end up in a recursive loop of never being able to prove anything. And he also pointed out to something called the incompleteness theorem. So he proved two things. One is that there will always be true statements that we can never prove. And two, for any system purporting a level of consistency, it can never prove its own consistency. So math, for example, the highest level of computation or trustworthiness we have, it has its own limits in the sense that it cannot itself prove its consistency. I wonder if code 19 can do that. That would be an ultra miracle. But ultimately he's pointing to the fact that even math, the highest level of understanding that we have, the most advanced form of science, has a limit, and you have to at one point put a question of trust. I believe this works, therefore it works, instead of I have irrefutable proof that it works. I won't go more into that, but that's what Gödel was talking about. And then you've got the PNP problem. This is an interesting one. So this is something called computational intractability. So PNP problem is one that is still unsolved today, which is that if P equals NP, and it's asking a very simple question, is ask whether every problem whose solution is quickly checkable, NP, can also be solved quickly, P. So imagine a Sudoku game as a puzzle, right? Once you solve the puzzle, you can return it to a checker and they can immediately tell you that this is correct, right? They just go across, they add up to, check that it all adds up to, I don't remember now. Is it up to 9? Yeah, it's up to 9, isn't it? And you just validate each column, each row, and you quickly get the fact that this is the correct answer. So that's NP. NP is checking that the answer is correct. P, the polynomial, is the solution itself, whether the solution is easy or not. So the PNP problem posits that if P equals NP, then for every solution that is simply verifiable, like this Sudoku puzzle, then its solution, there must also exist a solution that is easy. And they have this analogy of the salesman? Yes. So imagine you add a number of salesmen that have to travel the country, go to Utah, go to New York, go to whatever. And the problem is that they have to find the shortest route to go between each of these points without visiting it more than once. And so this is actually a P problem. It's hard to decide what the shortest route is. But if the shortest route has been decided, it's an NP problem. One could look at that and say, yep, that absolutely is the shortest route. And we still don't know this. Till today, we still can't figure out whether P equals NP or P is not equals NP. So again, the reference to the dark room, finding something in the darkness might be vastly more difficult than confirming it once you stumble upon it. We don't know if a shortcut to discovering everything in the room exists. A profound open question. So we don't know to this day. Something that has an easily verifiable solution doesn't necessarily mean it has an easy solution. We still don't know. So that's just the summary of the article. But the whole point of this article is pointing to the fact that we are in this dark room, right? Without God's light, without His illuminance, without His direction, we are perpetually in the dark. Even with the best minds, with the best technologies, with the best abilities, the max we could get, kind of like the distance in between the atom, is just that space, that speck of dust in between this infinitely long percentile of a number. That's the best we could do. Even if we become a type 1, type 2 civilization, they go through these science fiction ideas where you can control the energy, the entire energy of the solar system. Even if we got that far, God is saying, even then, you will not be able to penetrate the limits. I think it's this one. Yes, 55:33. Oh, you jinns and human, if you can penetrate the outer limits of the heavens and the earth, go ahead and penetrate. You cannot penetrate without authorization. Even if you had the power, the ability, which we are nowhere near having those qualities, if God says no, you're not going past go. Right? You're stuck in jail. Unfortunately, this is our jail, this earth, that dream, as it were. That marks the end of it.